One of the things I do is I have a 3-month program where I work with people on a couple hours a week and we go through the building blocks that I just talked about. I've got real simple forms, real simple charts. I even have an online course that people can sign up for to kind of go through that process. But for me, find people that do things really well and shamelessly copy the hell out of them. I want you to copy what I did. I want you to copy everything that I did so you don't have to necessarily go through the challenges that I went through. Think of it as like cheat codes in a video game. What are the business cheat codes that are out?
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is Zachary Green, the founder and managing partner of Warrior Enterprises. Warrior Enterprises is a leadership development company that transforms historic battlefield lessons into real-world leadership strategies for business, military, and first responders. Zach, so excited to have you on today. How you doing?
Chris, thank you. It's a real honor to be on the show. I'm a big fan of yours and just excited to have a chance to spend some time with you and your listeners.
Hey, thank you so much. We appreciate it. You have quite a inspiring and incredible journey. Tell us more about your background, your journey, what you were doing, and how that kind of led you into what you're doing today.
Sure. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. No one in my family had been in the military. Matter of fact, my family were pretty liberal and anti-gun. I wasn't even allowed to have squirt guns growing up. And everyone in my family were either lawyers or musicians. And at a very early age, I wanted to join the Marine Corps. I had pretty significant ADHD growing up, went to about 7 different schools. It's funny because it's called multitasking when you get out of school. And all of a sudden, it's this great thing that every entrepreneur needs. But when you're trying to sit at the desk, it's called ADHD and they try to medicate you and do all this other stuff. What I ended up joining the Marines right out of high school, was still in college at the time, did kind of the summertime thing, went through both enlisted and the officer program. And then just as I was getting out, I'm like, you know what? I've had enough of this. I want to go pursue the civilian world. And I finished up as a corporal. 2 years later, September 11th happened. And I felt really guilty that I'd gotten out because a lot of my brothers didn't come back. And I had a full-time job then at Eli Lilly. I was in brand development and marketing. And one of my favorite assignments was doing leadership development training. I became a volunteer firefighter because I felt that was the new forward line of the battle. And our homeland needed to be protected just like some far off distant lands. And I got lost in a fire. It was a really scary situation right when I first started. And I wanted to figure out, how can I not have other firefighters go through this? And Eli Lilly, specifically around corporate branding, we never sell features in our medicines. We talk about the problem, diabetes, mental health, whatever. And then we talk about the solution around that brand. The problem I had wasn't that I just got lost in a fire. I got disoriented. I couldn't see my way around because it was dark. And I remembered as a grunt in the Marines, our infantrymen, we had these glow in the dark taps on the back of our helmet. And I thought, what if I could apply those same technology to firefighter technology? Started working on a couple different products and developed some prototypes, started selling it out of the trunk of my car, made $5,000 in 6 months. And my fire chief sat me down and says, look, you've got something that's going to change the fire service. Stop treating it as a hobby. And I remembered a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, if you're faced with a monumental decision, the best thing to do is the right thing. The next best thing to do is the wrong thing, but the worst thing to do is to do nothing. So quit my job at Lilly, maxed out my credit cards, went to this trade show. In 3 days, I booked $100,000 in sales. The problem was I had no money left. I had no manufacturing. I had no way to fill these orders, but I'm a Marine and we always accomplish our mission. And I remember telling everybody that told me, hey, you got to start returning orders and you got to close up shop. And I'm like, no, this is how I work. I always accomplish the mission. And over the next 10 years, it was brutal, but I grew it into about a $30 million company. And it was through those things that I learned in the Marine Corps and those warrior traits that really helped me during those dark times and helped me really to grow it into where it is today.
That is quite the journey, quite the experience. You are just a testament of what the American dream, the entrepreneurship is all about. Creating an idea, something that solves a problem here, and kind of the direction that it went to. You demonstrated product validation first before even saying, I'm going to build this huge product and create manufacturing. Let me just see if I can sell the idea yet. And you did. And now the second issue became fulfillment, but so grateful that you actually saw it through, because that's where a lot of entrepreneurs can fall apart, is the fulfillment piece. They hit that obstacle and they struggle to follow through. And I see a lot of veterans that are also getting into business. Is it that the military teaches so many veterans about how to be better leaders and that's a natural progression? Or do you think leaders kind of naturally gravitate towards the military?
I think it's a little bit of both. You used to think I was made a Marine when I got down there. I think we all kind of had a little bit of that warrior ethos in us before we got down there. But the job of our military is not just to make great warriors, to great defenders. It's to make great Americans. And I think at the heart of what America is, it's the right to pursue the pursuit of happiness, the freedom to be able, not because of the color of your skin or your parents' name, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. You look at all the great success stories, they usually start off in really bad situations, and they use that challenge and that turmoil. The iron sharpens iron to grow. I think the easiest way to answer your question on why you see a lot of veterans, it's one word. And there's one word that is the difference between successful entrepreneurs and not successful entrepreneurs. It's grit. You just have to accept that no matter what problem is out there, there's a solution to the problem. The challenge is most people aren't willing to do what that solution is. In my case, that was putting my house on as collateral for a loan. In that case, it was not just firing one of my best friends, but suing one of my best friends because he really messed some things up within the company. Those are things that most people would never do that. But they say an entrepreneur lives the rest of their life like most people never could because they do those things early on like most people never would for those short times where they're going through those crucibles and challenges.
Yes, absolutely. That grit and ability to overcome obstacles in the face of adversity is something that people need to have, especially as entrepreneurs. And now you've created this lesson that focuses on what being a warrior is and this brand as more of a leadership tool. Can you tell me more about this program, some of the key lessons or the pillars that it's kind of built upon?
So as I started doing research for my book, Warrior Entrepreneur, Lessons from the Battlefield, the Boardroom, I started to realize we always want to chase these new leadership trends. So it's John Maxwell, it's Tony Robbins, it's Simon Sinek, Malcolm Gladwell. They're phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. But there's timeless leadership lessons that have not changed from all the way back in the Spartan times of ancient Rome or Greece and the Bible and Civil War, these core leadership things. And I started to find these common traits with warriors, and they were the same common traits that I saw from Walt Disney, from Elon Musk, from Mamafuku Ando, who invented the ramen noodles, instant ramen noodles. And it was this concept of grit and inspiring others. And so what I said is, okay, there's enough MBAs out. There's enough of what I call intellectual derelicts that have unbelievable brilliance, but they can't communicate with people. It's easy for someone that's smart to talk about complicated things. The difficult thing is how can they take something complicated and break it down super simple? As we said in the Marine Corps, Sesame Street style or Barney style, for those of you are old enough to remember. So that was one part, is how can I teach these warrior lessons? The second thing was a lot of my brothers and sisters have committed suicide since they've been out, and it's an epidemic problem. They say it's 22 a day. It's not 22 a day. It's like 40 or 50 a day. And there's three main reasons why they do it. The first reason is they stop moving. There's a real connection between just exercise and getting outdoors and moving. The second one, I can't really do much about that. That's something that's up to each individual. Second one is they lose their tribe. They lose that brother. You mentioned your brothers in the Marines. I'm sure if we met, we would have a connection that is so deep, even though we never met each other because we have that shared heritage. So you miss the tribe, the people you can talk to, you can cry with, you can drink with, you can party with. They understand your bad jokes and that's. But the third one that really gets that veteran to make that horrible ultimate decision is they lose their sense of purpose. And so what I'm doing through Warrior Enterprises is taking those veterans and giving them a chance to show that they're not just great veterans, but they're great Americans, and doing that by teaching our next generation of leaders how to lead, using those long-term, really battle-tested leadership tools that have been forged in fire and forged in the crucible of death and destruction and civilization, and then apply that to business. So here I'm helping my brother and sister veterans out. I'm giving them purpose. I'm giving them a tribe. And then the other thing is I'm helping our next generation of leaders by teaching them how to be great leaders.
That is absolutely fantastic. When you consider just overall today's age where mental health is become an issue, not only for veterans, but I think just generally post-COVID, or technology is kind of shifting the way that we have our typical family or friend structure or a typical place of gathering. What kind of changes are you seeing happening And are there ways we can kind of bring it back to some of the traditional ways that bring us together, the culture, the self-worth, that sense of belonging?
I think it really revolves around Simon Sinek. He talks about the golden circle. Most businesses focus on the what and the how, but the companies that focus on the why, they're the ones that really make a difference. So that's the first thing I say is that why. The second one is there's a new way that we communicate with each other. My son, I tell him to go outside and play with your friends. Well, there's no friends to play with outside. All right. He gets on his virtual reality and he has these unbelievable, meaningful relationships. He's had 2 girlfriends that they never met. And we were talking to somebody making fun of it. They said, no, that is just as real of a relationship as what you had when you were driving on dates. My son doesn't drive a car because none of his friends drive cars because they got VR headsets. So where does this come together? What we were trying to do is focusing on this experiential learning where we take people to Gettysburg, to Normandy to teach them those timeless lessons. And what we found out is, yes, nothing beats going there. But my son said, what if we could VR glasses on them? So we don't take them to Normandy, but we go to their office, because the challenge we were having is scalability and the ability to really make it repeatable. That's not scalable and repeatable to take 15 people to Normandy every 3 days. But by using what my son has shown us with the virtual reality, and I can take you to the battlefield. But the cool thing is I can give you a connection to General MacArthur you could never get on the beach. I can go up 5,000 feet in the air and see the whole entire Nazi defenses along the coast and where the different entrances and exits where they came on the beach. And then through the power of AI, we've developed our own large language model that's looking at all these different leadership traits. We can start to capture the experience that you're having in VR and give it back to you and give you different analysis and show how you compare to other people. So now we're communicating you in this multi-sensory domain, experiential learning that's involving storytelling, virtual reality, AI, extended reality, iPad discussions. And at the end, we tied in with the most absolute best form of learning. And that is the 3 magic words. Tell me a story. Once upon a time, I was in Eli Lilly and we were behind budget on this thing and I had to do this and this is what happened. People will remember that story. But if I teach them 5 PowerPoint slides that have 4 points in each of those PowerPoint slides about what I just did, they'll remember it, but they'll remember the story and they'll remember that lesson. And that's what we're trying to do is connect history with modern day experiences through storytelling and technology to get people to learn faster and to reduce skill fade.
Wow, that is so cool. Just to think about that intersect between the human connection, communication, the feedback that we can get from technology and AI, and using virtual reality to now create this new, I guess I could call it a 4th dimension, where you're getting real-time feedback about your leadership skills. So I feel like people could go on throughout their regular workday and get live feedback on how their leadership skills are performing and just how they're interacting with in general. That's so fascinating. Are there any other ways that you plan on using AI and technology, or just some cool ways that you've seen it incorporated into a lot of businesses?
So what we look at is, rather than any one methodology of learning, PowerPoint is fine, but if you just do PowerPoint, it's not really great. But when you can layer these on top of each other, you start to get this multiplicative effect. It's not 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's 1 + 1 + 1 = 30. And by layering a VR with the AI in the background, it starts with this intake assessment. We're trying to figure out, okay, we've identified 7 key timeless leadership traits that have never changed since the beginning of time. Through that intake survey, we're trying to figure out which one of those are the strings we're going to pull. Then we build out those scenarios in virtual reality, which we have literally only limited by your imagination. And then we go through these processes from VR. Then we go into the iPads where you're filling out case studies and asking questions. It then flows into storytelling and then ultimately ends up with an analysis that you get because we're capturing those data points. The other part of this is my instructors are veterans. So you've got a command sergeant major that was in charge of 20,000 troops and $1 billion of equipment. And he's an assistant manager in a warehouse now. And he doesn't feel good because his 3 guys that work for him won't pay attention to him. And he was used to leading literally warriors into the field of battle. He's lost his sense of purpose. If I can give him back to work with Chris and his team and give him that chance to, again, be that great American, pass that leadership on from the time he takes his uniform off to puts on his civilian clothes. And then we can continue that growth process and that learning and mentorship. And the people that are your mentees today, will eventually become the mentors tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. That sort of impact from one leader and mentor to another, those can be the next leaders, the leaders of tomorrow, which is really exciting. With all your past experience here, what is the best way that either the everyday person can support a veteran? How can we help them? You're doing a lot of great work. I feel like there's a lot of nonprofits, organizations that also do the work, but more could be done. What can the everyday person do for them?
So one of my pet peeves, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, and I don't mean to offend anybody whatsoever, but when you say thank you for your service, for me, I feel like it's like when you say bless you when someone sneezes. Are you really thanking you, or are you just kind of repeating this? I also feel like it's in some ways condolence, like, oh, I feel bad that you served, so thank you for the sacrifice. We don't want to feel like we're broken toys. And the reality is that the FBI put veterans on the watch list as potential dangers to society because of mental health issues or PTSD. If you want to thank a veteran for their service, let them continue to serve. And through whatever that is, through being in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, it's through leadership programs, hire them. That is the best way you can thank a veteran, is let them show you, because I will take a 22-year-old kid that grew up in the inner city that barely made it out of high school, but he literally was able to solve problems like you wouldn't imagine in the infantry or in logistics or whatever else. And no matter what, he's never going to quit, versus this kid that got his MBA from an Ivy League school, whose parents complained to the coach because they weren't getting soccer time in 7th grade, who in 10th grade, they got offended. So the principal brought everyone together and said, oh, you can't use those. Those are trigger words. Then they get to college, and as soon as they get somebody with a counterpoint of view to what they have to go to a safe space. And then they finally get out in the real world and they get crushed like a little paper tiger. That is who we think is the good leaders. They're not. What handed to you every now and then? Iron sharpens iron. The only way you get your muscle strong is by ripping them apart through weight training, and then they grow. And if you want to thank a veteran, give them the opportunity to continue to serve.
That is very well said. And it's something that it's almost compulsory reactionary to bless you, to thank you for your service. What else could we say, or if unsure of how to respond? So that's kind of the standard template that people go to. But it was more about practical ways to really connect and reach with veterans and how to give them that purpose. I feel like many other people, with things changing, have lost that sense of purpose and self-worth and that human connection. And maybe by trying to protect people, we've comforted them too much. And the real life experiences really shape you as an individual and teach you a lesson that just being told something won't change. So something to keep in mind as we kind of reshape the leaders of tomorrow and what we want our people to be.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to mess this quote up, but it's something like, weak men create hard times create strong men create weak times, and then weak times create weak men. I'm sure I messed that up, but somehow that circle comes through. Is eventually you're getting to the point where, as the helicopter parent, you're so worried that our kid's going to have a problem, we've never given them a chance to really grow and to do that next thing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it'll be something that will be studied for years to come. But I think that quote, as you described it, whether it's the correct process, yes, it's kind of this circular system that creates this effect here. Zach, for those who are interested in learning more about you and your journey, where can people connect with you online?
Yes, the best way is my website. It's real simple. It's my name, ZacharyLGreen.com, Zachary, L as in Lima, green.com. And then also LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So those are two of the best ways. And you can get in touch with me through my website, through LinkedIn. We do offer one day of these workshops that I was telling you about through experiential learning. We do those both with corporate America. I'm actually right now coming to you from Marine Corps base in Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, where we're actually doing an engagement with the military right now as we speak with some of these similar workshops.
That is very exciting. And we'll also have those links available down in the description and the show notes. Now, Zach, what are you most excited for in 2025? Are you kind of ramping up, doing any new campaigns or anything new and exciting coming out? I feel like you always have something cooking or working.
It's funny you say that. The last couple of years has been an interesting journey, because I think I really ended up on a pretty high note when I got to move down to Hilton Head. I got to buy the dream car that I had a poster of when I was a little kid and everything. And then over the last 2 or 3 years, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a new company. And I forgot how hard it is, because the last 2 years, it's not worked out the way that I thought. It's cost me a ton of money. I'm not bringing in revenue, but you know what? That's part of the journey. So what am I so excited about for this year? It's the last 2 to 3 years worth of work that I've done and now finally starting to come through. We're getting customers, we're building out our team. And I think what I'm most excited about is my best friend since fourth grade. We literally spent every weekend together growing up. He is now finishing 30 years in the U.S. Army as a lieutenant colonel at the Pentagon. And last week he started what's called his Skill Bridge program, which is this tremendous program that the military offers for people that are in their last 3 to 4 months of their time in service, where they can go work for a civilian company and still get paid from the military. So he started his Skill Bridge with me last week. And now we get a chance after 30 years of running apart to get the team back together. And he's now my president and my operations officer and helping me as we teach this new leadership model to corporate in America and government entities.
Wow, congratulations. That is really cool to kind of revisit that past experience relationship and bring that back in. Now with this new business, what changed that suddenly it started gaining more momentum because you had so many successes in the past, and this one, it's kind of like, what was wrong?
It's the same thing that happened with my previous company. We lost millions of dollars. I mean, millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden it just worked. And we were averaging $10 million a year in revenue multiple years after that. Where the year prior to that, we kept losing $300,000, $500,000. Back to that whole thing with grit. What's the right idea? You're solving a problem. You've got a really good unfair competitive business advantage. You've got really good sales, marketing, distribution. But sometimes, and the number one reason businesses fail is the founder just gives up. Main reason they give up is they run out of money. And if you can just push through and find out, what I always tell people, it's okay to give up sometimes. There comes to a certain point where you're like, this just is not happening. We don't want to put good money after bad money. But if you can't get investors and the bank is turning you down, they're really smart people. They're usually a lot smarter than the entrepreneurs. They're telling you that you probably don't have a viable business model. But if you can, like me, get those investors and get the banks that are willing to take the risk off of it. And they're saying, hey, well, there's something there, because they're really good at poking ideas and trying to crush dreams. And eventually, if they can't crush your dream, then you realize maybe there's something there. But then that's where the hard work comes in. And that's the grit and that tenacity of just pushing through those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that balance between the sunken cost fallacy. Do I want to keep investing this? Or do I see this through and moments from the goal line here, and you just have to see it through? It's very important. If you had to restart a new business tomorrow, what would be either the problem that you solve or the way that you would approach this new business?
I think the simple answer to that is the latter part, which is the way I would approach it. And I kind of shared with you before, but it's three very simple things. Number one, have you solved a problem in a unique and elegant way? Most companies and most products, especially entrepreneurs, focus on features and benefits. They don't focus on what's the problem they're solving. And when you focus too much on features and benefits, you get really nervous that someone's going to copy your features and benefits. Or you do what I think is one of the worst things an entrepreneur can do and get a patent, because that way it prevents other people from knowing about it. Well, great. No one's going to steal your idea, but no one's going to know about it. And by the way, if someone steals your idea, that's called market validation. That means you got a good idea. Your job is to stay on top. Brings us number two. What is your unfair competitive business advantage? David beat Goliath for a couple of reasons, but one reason is he figured out what was David's or Goliath's weaknesses. Goliath was big and strong. That was his strength, but his weaknesses was he was slow. He had bad vision. So what did David do? He ran far away so he couldn't see him, and he used a weapon that gave advantage to distance versus up close. What is your unfair advantage of a business? Not illegal, not unethical, but unfair advantage, okay? And then the third one, which is hands down the most important, you got to have kick-ass sales, marketing, and distribution. Because if you've got the greatest product in the world and nobody knows about it, it ain't going to work. There's one product out there that right now is sitting at about $700-800 billion a year in revenue and soon to be to $1 trillion, and 30 years ago was non-existent. It's bottled water. Bottled water has been around forever. We drank it out of the hose for free. You can go to the park and get it for free. But because Coca-Cola bought Dasani and they said, we can market this thing. And all of a sudden people start showing up with these water bottles at the soccer games and stuff. And people are like, oh, I can buy water instead of having to go to the hose. It was all because of marketing distribution. Because at the end of the day, water is water. I don't care if you say, well, this is from the Alps in France and this one here is from the tap. Bullshit. It's all water. All right. Water is water.
It's a great take, Zach. I love it. If I can just have your personality and your business mentorship just as a coworker or like a leader next to me all the time, that would make my life and my work day so much more enjoyable.
Well, Chris, I do offer coaching. I usually have about 6 clients at a time. I'm down to 4 right now. So one of the things I do is I have a 3-month program where I work with people on a couple hours a week, and we go through the building blocks that I just talked about. I've got real simple forms, real simple charts. I even have an online course that people can sign up for to kind of go through that process. But for me, find people that do things really well and shamelessly copy the hell out of them. I want you to copy what I did. I want you to copy everything that I did so you don't have to necessarily go through the challenges that I went through. Think of it as like cheat codes in a video game. What are the business cheat codes that are out?
I can tell you all the time, I'm looking up resources, cheat codes online, whether for games or for business, because I feel like there's always going to be a path of least resistance. It's not laziness. It's more, I just want to be efficient with this process. And that way you can take more time to invest it in elsewhere. Do you want to make that idea better? Invest it into yourself, relationships. So I love that idea. And the fact that you have an easy next step to the process. One thing I tell people is just remove friction from the buyer's journey. Make it so simple and easy. And like, hey, we're a professional organization. We have things set up here.
It's like water always finds the path of least resistance. Your business processes should be like the flow of water. It just finds its way down there without any human involvement whatsoever.
I agree. Absolutely. And it's so exciting to see what advances both in technology and AI are kind of bringing to businesses and what leaders are kind of bringing to businesses and just relationships as a whole. Because this blending of technology and more human-centered relationships, we just need to find that balance and get our bearings back to us. I think since post-COVID and just in general, I feel like people are feeling a bit lost.
Well, the world has become much smaller because of COVID, because we can touch people a lot easier. The second thing is AI is going to be such an incredible game changer. Don't be worried about AI. It's not robots taking over the world. It's basically Google on steroids. But what can happen now is I can take my thoughts and put them into something like a Chat GPT or my own large language model, and it'll help organize my thoughts and give us that speed to where we want. And we're like, Chris, that just makes so much sense. If you're not using AI right now, I can guarantee you your competitors are. And you're not going to be able to compete against them if they're using that machine learning and you're not.
Absolutely. Definitely agree. I feel like a lot of solopreneurs and small businesses access to what feels like a larger team that only these big box companies used to have. So it allows them to do a lot more with less time. And I agree, using Chat GPT for a little clarity and direction is always great. I'll be speaking on AI and technology at a virtual summit coming up for nonprofits here April 16th, but super excited to share some of those lessons, everything I'm teaching and learning from AI, applying it to business and nonprofits and kind of focusing around the human-centered approach and relationship. Don't be worried about the jobs. It's just enhancing what we're doing currently.
Well, Chris, we talked about at the beginning. I want to reiterate again the importance of being a great American. You're a great American. You are helping other people pursue their entrepreneurial dreams to give them the freedom that they can do whatever they want. And people like you that make this country what it is. And thank you for what you do for the entrepreneurial community.
I appreciate that, Zach. And likewise to you, if it wasn't for all these great ideas, wow, you can actually make $30 million worth of business. And that's just off of an idea and then the execution and to really see it through. That's inspiring. It's all the previous entrepreneurs that led us to today. So thank you for what you do as well, because we need more positive leaders like you who can be role models for the leaders of tomorrow. And thank you for your kind words as well, Zach. I appreciate that.
All right, Chris, keep in touch, my man.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us on the episode. Make sure you check out all the links available down in the description and get connected with Zachary Green here to find out more about his Warrior Leadership Program. Thank you so much, Zach.